Hi, I'm SL Weppel, author of The Butcher and the Liar, and welcome to One Final Twist.
So I am so excited to talk to you. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry I didn't read this faster. That doesn't happen to me often where I'm like, oh, why did I sit on that? And this book got me about that. So, um, tell us, well, okay. Tell us about the book. Tell us about The Butcher and the Liar so that anybody watching it knows what to pick up or what they're getting into.
Sounds good. So, this book is about a young woman. Her name is Daisy Bellin. And at the age of 9 years old, she discovers that her father is a serial killer. And he basically tricks her into complacency. And then she becomes haunted by the ghost of his victim. And it's a dual timeline. So it also takes place when Daisy's 33 years old. She's running a successful butcher shop in the city of Chicago. And she thinks that she has left her past, all the trauma of her past behind her. And she's carefully crafted this life of lies where she is not who she says she is. And of course, thinking that it's all left behind, she gets an anonymous letter in the mail one day, which is the first step of sort of bringing her past back into the forefront where she has to face it. So that's kind of the gist.
Okay, so it's really going to be a struggle to not give anything away with some of the questions that I want to ask. Uh, so the first thing I want to ask about is when you write dual timelines, do you write them like, do they come out in order, or did you write the past and the present and then join them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the first draft of this novel, I wrote both timelines at the same time and just kind of going back and forth. I will say throughout the editing process, the adult timeline has changed dramatically. So I wasn't necessarily successful at writing it the first time, both at the same time. So if I had to summarize it, I would say I wrote, when looking at the final product, the young timeline, and that has changed very little, whereas the adult timeline has changed a lot through the editing process. But it did start out as both at the same time.
So Daisy's family had a butcher shop. What was the nugget that started this? Because that's a great cover for a serial killer. I'm not gonna lie. I love it. So
Right.
what was the nugget?
So this book was inspired by the fact that I actually grew up in a small town in Nebraska, and I lived about 3 blocks away from a cattle auction. And I moved away from that town when I was about 7 years old. But I have this very visceral memory of spending time at this cattle auction. And this is, where Daisy spends all of her time. And it's always kind of been in the back of my mind that this would be a very interesting setting for some kind of story. Um, but it just like the sounds, the smells, the environment, it was just a very formative memory as a child. And then later on, I actually, for 10 years, I lived in Chicago and I lived in the meatpacking district. And it was at that time very quickly, and this is the same as the book, transforming into sort of more of an upscale, foodie destination neighborhood. And I just thought the juxtaposition of those two environments together would make a really interesting story. And I don't know where the serial killer aspect came from. That was definitely not autobiographical, but I will say my father was a prison guard for like 25 years. So maybe that somehow seeped into my subconscious as well. I don't know. But that's kind of where the story originated.
Do you listen to podcasts like true crime podcasts and things like that?
I have, and I have listened to a few of like the pretty popular ones, but it's not something I'm doing a ton of. No.
Find that a lot of my fellow readers, if we aren't reading a book, that's probably what we're listening to. Like I mean, you have hit a sweet spot with like 30 to 60-year-old women.
Right.
We love a serial killer. Why? I don't know, but we do.
Yeah. And it is that age range because it's very much, she's growing up small town Midwest, late 80s, early 90s. And I think I do use a lot of references from that time period. And so I think that's kind of resonated with some people of that general age range as well.
How long did it take from start to finish with The Butcher and the Liar?
Uh, a long time, years, because I wrote that first draft during like early COVID, I think. And then I loved it, but I knew there was something not right with the adult version of the story, and I was too deep in it. So I had to just set it aside for several years, and then I came back to it um gosh, a year and a half ago. And at that point, I was far enough removed from it that I came back and I kind of just knew what needed to happen, and how to adjust and change and edit it. And yeah, I went from there. So probably like 5 years total.
So before that was a book that I haven't read yet, but I would like to pick it up and Flipping the Birdie. Is that
Yes.
what it was? Okay. Because I saw it like in passing getting ready for this, and I said, huh, I've missed that one. Tell me about that one.
So that was the first book I published. And I actually wrote that in between the first and second draft of Butcher and the Liar. Um, and I think I needed to like write something a little lighter and a little fun, fresh, silly in a way. And so a rom com was a great deviation. And that book is about a woman who is a literal superhero, but in a world where superheroes are like municipal in nature. They like live in certain towns and they just serve that town as like a government employee. And as like the strongest and fastest woman on the planet, she's often ridiculed. She kind of has a bad attitude. She's not very good with the press. And so that kind of comes to a head right in the early stages of the book. And she is basically suspended from her job and said, go get happy, go figure out, go to therapy. And so the rest of the book is her kind of getting out of the city, going to therapy, meeting a new friend who kind of changes her life, and her friend's brother, who just happens to be um, someone who can handle her super speed and super strength. And it's not it's a superhero book, but it's not a superhero book. The book is very much like a romantic comedy, and the superhero aspect is really a metaphor for just all of the stuff that women have on their plate, and all of the roles that they play in public and private, and who they are versus who the world perceives them as. And so that's kind of where that superhero aspect came from. But yeah, it's a rom-com. It's pretty fun.
Those are like basically polar opposites.
Yeah, they're very opposite.
Which one was, say, I don't know if you would say easiest, because I imagine they both have their own challenges. Which one was the most rewarding to write?
I mean, yeah, they're both rewarding. I did find that the Birdie book was probably just came a little more easily. And I think it's because The Butcher and the Liar has so many components and shifts and twists and turns that that's just more difficult to master, right? And to get exactly the way you want and to flow the right way. Whereas romantic comedies, it's important to be original and unique and present it in a new way, but there is kind of a formula to follow. And so um I don't know. Yeah, I mean they're both rewarding. I love them both. They're my children. So like every day, you ask me which one I like better. I don't know. It's not fair.
Well, so when I'm reading other reviews about books, I find like when I'm in that sci-fi speculative fiction, when you go like you've got superheroes and you've got this part of it, there's you can't really prove or disprove it. But like with the Butcher and the Liar, there are facts in there, like the cattle auction better be right, the way that the knife that's used for this better be right, or somebody's going to say, nope, I caught you.
Right. Right. There, yeah, you will. I warn people not to look at my internet search history because there's just so many like butcher videos. And I mean, there are butcher shops out there. I found this woman-owned butcher shop and then, some other butcher shops as well, where they would just have like an hour plus video or multiple videos explaining what they're doing, how they're doing it, you know, the knives that they're using. I did a lot of research because, yeah, that is very important. You want to get that as true to life as possible. It certainly isn't something that's probably perfect at all, but it's hopefully it's close enough where I'm not going to get a lot of pushback. But yeah, I spent a lot of time just watching animals being butchered. It's a little weird.
So for me, Daisy's story kind of ended up being less about the serial killer and more about survival and what you take with you through childhood, how you survive that childhood. Was that like your intent when you started, or were you just shooting for the?
No, yeah, that was my intent. It was interesting because once I published it, the book was kind of labeled a thriller. And when I was writing it, I guess I didn't really have any genre in mind, but I didn't know that I was writing something that would be viewed as a thriller or horror or maybe psychological fiction. But it has aspects of all of those things. But to me, it really is just the story of Daisy ultimately what a trauma like that does to somebody and how it affects their lives and all the trauma begets trauma and all of the lives around them. So how she becomes who she is, why she is who she is, and how that affects both her and then the people that come into her life. So that was really um, my goal. So I think you got it right.
And you're right when you say like it doesn't really fit horror, it doesn't really fit a thriller or psychological thriller. You almost need to say dark
Right.
psychological thriller. Like
Right.
that people need to know because I've suggested it, and they're like, Teresa, you didn't tell me that was dark. Oh, it's dark. But
Yeah.
like you could tie a man to a stake and disembowel him, and I'm gonna eat that up.
Right.
I'm right there for it. So it does stuff like that
I
doesn't.
hear you. Yeah.
Was there a part of Daisy's journey that was hardest for you, or what was the hardest part to write?
I think that the hardest part to get confidence with and feel like I had portrayed it appropriately was Daisy as a child. And her, she's 9 years old when this starts. And, I didn't want it to be, oh, an actual, you know, a balance between what a 9 year old would actually, how they would actually respond and how a reader would like enjoy a book. It's not a kid's book, right? So it's not about a 9 year old. And so balancing that perception of her, it's told in past tense. So how much of it is her kind of speaking from the future versus how much of her in real time? That all was a little bit just challenging to get that voice correct, uh, or at least feel confident because when I asked or had go through editing process, people had different views about how that should be portrayed, whether it should be, more true to a 9 year old or more specifically from adulthood. And so it was a balance, it was a back and forth, and it was a challenge. But I think I was very happy with where I ended up.
So her neighbor that kind of was her guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect. I loved every time he would come back into her life. So and it felt such like so personal. So I have to ask for me. Did you have somebody like that in your life?
I mean, honestly, I think I had a ton of people like that in my life. It's all like the beautiful romantic stories that I've seen or heard. Did I have a real person like that in my life? Not necessarily. Um, but I think I'm a romantic at heart. I enjoy romance. I obviously wrote a rom-com. Um, but it's hard for me to read a story and love it, tremendously love it, to read it or write it if it doesn't have just even the smallest hint of romance. And I don't necessarily need it to be the center of the story, but it was important to me in this particular story that there be, because it is a dark story, so it needed to have a ray of light in it, something that Daisy could grasp, someone in this case that she could kind of grasp onto, that represents normalcy. and the juxtaposition of his very normal life next door to her very traumatic one, and how they interact, and how she kind of keeps him at a distance. But yeah, I wish, but no.
It just for me that connection was the probably the most personal part. But I think like she where she had lost her mom, and if you think about it, like I don't know that she ever had her mom because
Right.
what was there before was always there.
Yeah.
Before she was born, like her, you know, the mom's parents had a bad feeling about it, like,
Yeah.
um, but it felt so personal, and it was so important to the story that he continued to show up in her life.
Right.
Oh, I loved it. Okay, so if do you think a child, let's just say this really happened and this Daisy is real. Do you think she can outrun that? Or does that these trauma, like, are you always part of that trauma? Are you do you always bring or can you ever unpack it and say, I'm okay with what happened?
I mean, I'm certainly not a psychologist. I guess in the way I wrote it, and what I would believe is that it might be one of the most difficult things anyone ever does in their life is to sort of get past that level of trauma, and that kind of um, childhood experience that's just completely steeped in evil, and that's really all she knows. But at the same time, um, I I think at the crux of the story is her relationship with her father, because he's evil, but he's her father. And so it's this nature versus nurture, right? She knows he's bad, she hates him, but at the same time he is her father. He in many ways is good to her. It's all she knows, right? So she grasps onto it, and that's her, if she doesn't have him, what does she have, right? Everything else feels movable and is quick to disappear, but her father is the only constant in her life, even if he is terrible. And I think in a lot of ways, people grapple with that in adulthood, like who their parents were, even not to that level of, debasement, but like who their parents were, who they are as a reflection of them, you know, creating their own identity sort of from the pieces of your past in your childhood. So I think it's one of those things that is kind of universal. Everybody deals with it and everybody grapples with it, and some of us are more successful than others. It's sort of getting past it and finding our identity, and whether or not that's a reflection of our parents or not. Yeah, that's a tough one though.
I'll ease it up a little bit. Yeah,
That's okay.
this book just got under like it. I mean, I really want to like unpack it all. I really enjoyed it, and there's just a lot of layers to it, and you do get like the twists and the turns. But when you're finished, you have to unpack what you just read because
Right.
nuances and things that were in there. You could just about go back and reread it again and pick up something else that's in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it.
That's what happens when coming from like, I don't know, like 12, 13 rounds of edits. It's just like every little thing is like, there's so much in there. You know it like the back of your hand. And yeah. Now I can't handle reading it though. I was at an event on Monday where I did a short reading, and I honestly hadn't picked up the book since published date and like read any of it. And I started reading it and I was like, oh, and I just threw it aside. And my husband's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I can't read this. It's, you're just like constantly nitpicking. And even after it's published, I'm still like nitpicking and editing. And I was like, that could be a never ending cycle.
So indie versus traditional publishing. So some of the authors that I get to talk to said they'll never try to traditional because of the control that you lose. How
Right.
do you feel about that? What do you want? Are you
You
happy?
know, when I first started, I thought I wanted to go traditional. And I did query, and I didn't find a lot of success there. And then I decided, I was going to do it on my own, and I was going to stop that process and just work on getting an editor and going through the whole rigmarole of publishing on my own. Um, and then the next book, I didn't even bother. I just published on my own as well. And that's actually a question I grapple with because I'm looking at a third book and I'm deciding, do I want to even pursue traditional? There's a lot that's really attractive about it. Indie publishing is very hard. It's time consuming, it's expensive. It's just hard to get a book out there, and every take a step forward and a step back and a step forward and a step back, and just getting the recognition of a big publisher and having their market penetration would be great. But I also talk to a lot of authors that you know all they talk about is, oh well, I got to make sure my book is in this tone, is specifically the same tone as this book, and I can't deviate from what I did before, and they're changing the ending. And I like feedback, and I'm happy to get feedback and make adjustments, but at this point in time, I feel like I'm one of those people that will just write the story that comes to me and the one that I feel really passionate about, which is what I've done. And those stories are quite different from each other. And I think if I were pigeonholed into writing a specific genre or in a specific tone, I think that would be a real challenge for me. And I don't know that I would enjoy it anymore. So I don't know. I may try to query and just sort of see what happens. And I may just go. It's a give and take, right? It's about the time you want to commit, the type of writer you are. Um, this isn't my full time job, so at this point, I have freedom to do it the way I want to do it. But it would be nice,
We see a lot debut authors, even if they're with a big publisher, they've still got to go out and promote their own book
right?
and do it anyway. And
That's
then
the other thing, yeah.
and they lose the control. Like it's still like for if it's a trilogy or whatever, they have to the creativity is lost, the cover artwork they can't pick.
Right.
Where somebody decides this name is going to be better than that name, but their heart is in choice A. So yeah, I can't imagine how that would feel.
Yeah. That's a given. Yeah, that would be a struggle. So I don't know. Cover art though. I wish someone would take that off my plate. I don't know. I just sit there and stare at the covers, and I don't know. I don't know which one. It's not something that speaks to me that I've never had like this is the perfect image of the cover in my mind. So when they send it to me, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to pick. It's terrible.
Who did this cover for you?
So I published through Books Fluent. And so they gave me multiple covers to choose from, and I agonized over that decision multiple times. But I don't know, it's just, I'm looking at it. So uh, I, I liked this one. I just thought it was simple, and I liked the typeset, and it's a slab of meat, so it was appropriate, but it's not obvious. It's a little bit abstract, a little avant-garde. So a lot of people are like, oh, they finish the book and they're like, oh, I just realized that this is a slab of meat on the cover.
Do you see the marbling through the front?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Well,
but I,
tell me,
I would be happy if someone else did that part for me.
that would be hard because like I pick books because of the cover. I'll pick
Yeah,
a book because of the cover before I'll pick because of the blurb.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and that's the reason I was like, I'm not good at marketing. I knew that is, how most people oftentimes will pick up a book is based on the cover. And so I was like, I don't, whatever you need to do to put on the cover, it's usually they know best. And so that's part, yeah, again, I'd love someone to take it off my plate.
So what's next for you? What you said you're already on moving on. What's coming at us?
So I have I've got a first draft done, and I'm sort of starting the editing process on a new book. And that is really, I recently moved to Minnesota, and I live in this beautiful old historic neighborhood with all these Victorian homes, and it's just, and wonderful people. It's like a very unique cluster of diversity, and really a lot of very kind people. For some reason, I know more of my neighbors in a couple years that I've lived here than I've ever known in any neighborhood I've ever lived in my whole life combined. And so it's just been a lovely experience. And it's sort of, this neighborhood is almost kind of magical. And I tend to write from setting first, is kind of where the stories are born. And so I'm working on something that is set in a very, or at least inspired by this beautiful old Victorian neighborhood. And it's very ripe for a story that involves magical realism. So that's that's where I'm going next.
How do you choose your character names?
Um, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. Well, so the first book I wrote, which is not published, that I love, has a character named Lily, and and then the second book I chose Daisy, and then I was like, well, I got to stop, no more flower names, and then so I picked Birdie, and I don't know, I don't, they just kind of come to me, and sometimes I'll write for a while and I won't know, I'll have some just generic name in there, and I'm like, it's a placeholder, and then I'll change it once I realize kind of who this character is and really get to know them.
Um, what are you currently reading?
What am I reading? So I just finished The River is Waiting by Wally Lamb. And it kind of broke me. I read Wally Lamb in college, the She's Come Undone, which I loved, and I remember really enjoying it. And then this was a hefty book, so I kind of was putting it off, and I knew it would like hurt me on the inside. So I was waiting for the right time to dive in, and yeah, I loved it. It was something. It was really good.
Do you have a book that you don't read, like maybe you would be embarrassed that you read, or like, oh, sweet niblets, I can't believe I read that. Like, is there
Oh,
something
I'll
that
read almost anything. I love it all. I'll read anything. You know, a book that I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know that
we
I.
have had a male author have read the 50 Shades of Grey?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's just
I've read that.
funny.
Everybody's read that though.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not really. Yeah, I don't know what my favorite book. Well, it's a book that I love and inspire. I feel like inspired me is this really old book, The Scarlet Pimpernel. So it was published in 1905 by this Baroness. I'll destroy the name, or Zosky or something. And she wrote several books, but and this became like a bit of a series. But it's the first. She's a female author, and it's the first modern presentation in a novel of a secret identity. And they made a couple of movies about it in like the 80s with Jane Seymour. I think I watched it in grade school for some reason. But I'm on like I was in love with the idea that the notion that a secret identity was first presented in a novel by a female author, which was really fun. And because I feel like I'm very enthralled with the secret identity. And the first book, obviously a very clear superhero. This book, she's two different people, he's two different people. I think that's probably, if I don't write specifically in genre, if there were a genre called like duality, like human duality, I think that would be my genre. So that's sort of a book that kind of got me down that. So it didn't answer your question exactly, but I guess if name it, I've probably read it.
That's so funny.
The good stuff and the not so good stuff.
Did you always know that being a writer was the end game for you?
I've always wanted to be a writer. And I didn't, when I was a kid, I wanted to work for National Geographic. I was a photojournalism major for a little bit and then decided I didn't want to do that. I always knew I wanted to write. I didn't really know in what capacity I was going to. In my 20s, I was very focused on my other career and working and going back to school and getting ahead in the job. And then by the time I was 30, I was like, I really miss this part of me. And so I kind of dived back in head first and wrote very silently on my own for 8-9 years before I decided, all right, I'm ready to put something out in the world. But yeah, I've always wanted to write.
From an indie author perspective, what is something that you would like readers, reviewers, what like Tell us what you want from. I've never asked this question. I don't know why I'm
That's a good
asking it,
question.
but I guess I'm asking mostly for myself. Like, what can we do to help you?
Oh, okay.
Like, what do you want? What do you want? I know, like I literally today just put the Amazon review up
Okay.
because I was going to print it out so I could, I wanted to print it out so I could look at it. And that's odd for me to have waited so long. And usually I put it all up at the same day. So,
Yeah.
other than that, what do you need from your readers?
I mean, ultimately, what I want from my readers is to, I mean, I want them to enjoy the book. I don't know. I want readers to enjoy it. I mean, the best thing that I could hope for is that someone enjoys the book and then they give it to somebody else or they tell somebody else about it and someone else reads it and then someone else reads it. And, um, I find that audience that, um, is open and enjoys this type of story. And, it's my retirement plan. Someday I'd love to just write.
We are, it's one thing we do is we're good. Like in the Instagram community, in the
Yes.
bookstore, we will talk about it. We
Yeah. I
we
love
will
it.
pass it off.
I was very impressed with the community and because I wasn't on Instagram until I started writing. And well, that's not true. Like 15 years ago or 10 years ago, I was on Instagram for a minute and then my account got taken over by like a Russian ballerina. So I don't know. That's what was the picture. I don't know. So I was like, let it go. And so I just joined Instagram when published my first book. And there's a lot of stuff you don't really care for on Instagram, but the book community is really something that, I mean, people have been so kind and nice. And if they like the book, they just shout from the rooftops, which has been really wonderful. Um, so I found it to be very open and accepting and kind and supportive, which is
I,
really cool.
we are good too, especially like if it's indie authors. Like I will read an indie author before I will read someone who has got 15 books out there. You're gonna
And
jump every.
that's rare. So I appreciate you. Maybe that's what I need. I need readers that if you ask what I need them to give indie books a chance and to, if they love it, to just, yeah, shout it from the rooftops.
Is there a local bookstore or a place that if anybody who's watching this can get a signed copy, or do you have a website?
I do have a website. I don't sell the books directly, but if somebody wants a signed copy and they can message me through my website, I'm more than happy to get them one. Um, and I don't know when this is public, but tomorrow actually, I'll be at a local bookstore here in Minneapolis called Once Upon a Crime from noon to 2, and I'll be signing books there as well. Although this will probably be published after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, because our we go up on Friday. Fridays at noon when it
Oh,
goes.
okay. Okay. Well, I will, and I keep it on my website. So I try to do a couple things, every once in a while here in the Twin Cities. And I travel a little bit. I don't have a ton of traction there yet. But yeah, anybody can message me through Instagram or through my website. And, if they want to review it, I'm happy to send books too.
Are you going to any of the big conferences like Thriller Fest, Killer Nashville? I'm trying to think though, and Malice the You won't go there. BoucherCon, anything big? BoucherCon's really not that awful far from you. It's in Calgary this year. I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah, I mean that's a ways, but it's not like it's next door. But you're closer than I am, so
um, I'm thinking about what is it? It's Killer Fest, right? It's the
in Mass.
yeah. Who hosts that? That's
He's a now if you had to ask me that, I would know. Because he like does he's like he writes books and a TV person. He does the new.
I feel like I was looking at that one, but no. I mean, the easy answer is no. I don't have anything on the docket yet.
Now it's Clay Stafford.
Okay.
Why could I not remember that? Anyways, I think for the first, I think most of that Killer Nashville is for writers, and the readers kind of are like an added bonus.
Got it. Okay.
But like VoucherCon, I feel like either next year it's in Washington or in Indianapolis. Like it's if it's whatever one it's not, it's gonna flip.
Okay.
Those I always tell like my indie authors, you go to those, you will network, you will talk, you will find other people who are writing like you write, readers who will make a scene to come and talk to you and get a book. That's probably me. I do that.
I love it.
But that networking seems to be the best thing that the indie
Yeah.
authors get to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to do it. I'll have to look into that one more closely. Uh,
It's this year. It's late. Down in October
okay.
in Calgary. So
20.
that I mean maybe it will work
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and talking to me. And all
This
right,
has been fun. I appreciate your time and inviting me to do this. Thank you so much. All right. Talk to you later.
bye.
Bye.